Hi everyone, this is your chess puzzler and a very warm welcome to the channel. This is game 2 of 8 between the so-called internet challenge between the legendary Bobby Fischer and Nigel Short. Or this is at least what Short himself claims. Over time, many came forward to claim these games were real, but the guy who claims to have been Fischer was somebody else, probably using an engine to help him beat Nigel. The games are very interesting in that Fischer, and let us claim for now he is Fischer, uses some highly rare openings to trick Short. In this game, Nigel assumed the white pieces and kicks off with e4, and Fischer responded with f6, which is highly not recommended for anyone to go for. Short responded with f4, and now with c6 and c4, Fischer comes up with a very similar move he played in other games, king f7. Nigel would have been shocked by this move, but let us see how he went about it. He developed his knight, but this game is not about how Short is dealing with each and every single move, but Fischer. If you thought this king move to f7 was weird and out of place, what would you think of Fischer's follow-up move? Just like in his game 6 with the white pieces, he had placed his king on f2 and then on f3 just to provoke Nigel, and this is exactly what he does in this game with the black pieces. He went for another crazy move and he won. King e6. There is in fact an engine game between Houdini and Stockfish in this year's season 10 games, when Stockfish got his king out to f6 in the very opening stages of the game, but these are rare games and you will hardly see them around. But this game goes way beyond what Stockfish tried in his game versus Houdini. I would try and add a link for you at the end of this game or in the description if you'd like to see it. Coming back to the game, Nigel was very keen to take advantage of Fischer's very badly positioned king and pushed on with d4. Any ideas on how Fischer continued here? Well, having seen what he played earlier, any move goes right now. Fischer went for a third consecutive king move by placing him on d6. Nigel closed d6 off to allow the bishop to come in with a check. And was he going to get the chance to do this? Maybe, maybe not. Fischer moved on for another king move, which makes it the fourth move if you like. I don't think we've ever seen anything like this, and this is why these games at the time generated so much publicity. This move was probably the only move that needed to be played because Nigel did come in with a check, but Fischer was in time to block it. Short has a huge advantage and is desperately looking for a way to convert, but do things look so obvious with the king now being tagged insecurely to this very strange square on c7. Short used the pin and went for c5. Fischer opened up the path for his bishop to intercept just in case we were going to see a check coming up. Short took, but is this not helping black to get his light coloured bishop active? Having recaptured on e6 was still allowing Nigel to enjoy a huge lead, but as with any game, it is all about the result. Short lined up the rook on c1, and here we saw a very weak response, a6, maybe to stop the knight from coming in with a check. This was a blitz game after all, and Short, I believe, was getting a bit frustrated because he wanted a quick result, but just couldn't find a nice and easy way to turn this one into a win. He decided to develop his other knight. But Fischer attacked this bishop on f4. We know this bishop must make a way out of f4, but before he repositioned him, he came in with a check first. Taking d6 is possible, but Fischer had a different idea. He pulled his king back to safety, and now Short attacked the bishop on e6. This led to two bishops disappearing in a flush, and immediately d6 was removed. Niger continued with this knight move to a4, and Fischer grabbed the opportunity to come in with a check. Now this knight on a4 can come back to cover, but there are so many other moves white can go for. Niger opted for a king move, losing any chance to castle. Knight h6 followed, and this move allows black to do a few things. But first things first, Niger got the queens off, and Fischer had to be a bit careful how to make the recapture. He obviously took with a king to avoid the fork on b6. Nigel still went for a knight move to b6, forcing now the rook to this very awkward square on a7. But this move came after Fischer got in with a check, pushing now the king to this square on e2, blocking temporarily this light colour bishop from the game. Short was not having any of this and attacked the knight, but he was in fact falling into Fischer's hand, because by repositioning this knight to e5, the trade-off allowed f4 to be strengthened. Short wanted to break up this strong connection and went for a small sacrificial move. Taking g3 got the bishop into the game, but also got the rooks connected. We saw a very quick king e7, h4, an attack on the knight, knight c4, and now the bishop moved back to a safe spot. Short continued by placing his rook on f1, in the hope he would be able to make an effective use of the 7th rank. Fischer gave him no chance and grabbed the soldier on e6. The bishop returned to h3 with a check, and when the king pulled back, the knight repositioned to this square on e3. Pausing for a quick evaluation, black is up by quite some margin, but the position may be considered more or less equal because white has so many active lines of play. His bishop is extremely well positioned, his knight on e3 is very strong, but if you look at black, he's so restricted. His rook on h8 is well out of the game, but just look at this other rook. Well, he's so deeply locked in a position where he cannot easily come out, and the same goes for this bishop and knight. g3 is also quite weak and is going to fall anytime soon. Fischer got his rook active on g8, but if this was to save g3, this was going to be a futile attempt. Fischer came in with a check, and this king has to be careful to avoid a potential fork. For example, a king move to f7 or f8 is going to cost him. Fischer here moved his king to a square where there was no such danger. After rook cd1 and c5, getting ready for Fischer's knight to get into the game, the knight attacked the rook. But if you blinked here, you would have missed it, because Fischer turned this defensive move into an offensive one by attacking this knight. Any ideas how to go about the game on this move in 2, 1 and pause? Niger moved his knight back to safety, but I think there is a far stronger move in this position. Simply go for this rook move to f7, and should you now take this knight, the bishop will fall. After the essential knight c6 for obvious reasons, the rook can still come in with a check, and once the king is pursued, white can bring into play his other rook, and this is what happens when the king escapes to g6. You can either take this knight on c6, and when you recapture, the rook also comes off, or if we come back, you can go for something slightly stronger. Can you see it? Using e4 as a stepping stone, you can come in with the bishop check, forcing now the king to flee to the only legal square he can. And now what? Well, I'm sure if you sit down and think how to go about this, you will have no trouble finding the 1 or even 2 moves that count. Any ideas, anyone, in 2, 1 and pause? King f3 is what you're looking for. And even if you allow the knight to come in with a check, just take g3. It is understandable the knight would remove the bishop, but after e recaptures, the answer is all in the position. Going for e4, which looks to be a very reasonable response, is very likely going to trigger mate just because of the position of the black king, and provided you find this rook move to g8. That is all you need. Once you reach this position, there is no return. For starters, the rook needs to come off, but once you remove this rook with your rook, recapturing will lead to mating 1 through this rook move to h7, and there we have those special sound effects. Coming back to the actual game, Fischer never went for this rook move to f7, but opted to go for his knight's safety. Fischer carried on with g2, which is purely a computer move, and there are many reasons why black wants to push on with such a move. After rook f2, king e7, rook takes, and knight c6, Short retreated his knight, forcing Fischer to either take this rook or move him out. Leaving very little choice, the rooks came off, and once the knight came in with a check, this game was suddenly getting all too interesting. Short made a king move toward the knight, and now with b5, blocking the access to c4, it was Short's turn to come in with a check. King d6 led to this rook to move out to f1, and you can already see how Fischer is in a dominant position. If only Short can come in with a check on f6, this game will be over, but Fischer, or our Fischer imposter, seems to have the answer to this attack. He came up with this bishop move to d8, protecting f6. Having eliminated the possibility of getting into f6, Short attacked the bishop, and since h4 was open for the taking, Fischer just grabbed him. b4 followed, but how effective was such a move when Fischer came in with a check? Having pushed the king to c3 led to this rook move to attack the bishop, and now once the bishop moved out of danger, Fischer went for e4. Not being able to save e4, Short decided to counterattack and went for a6. And this is the problem with this rook move to a8. Rook takes, and king takes, and just see how quickly the pieces were disappearing from the board. The whole idea of this sequence of moves rested on this particular bishop move. Short pinned the rook, and now this rook was guaranteed. But was he really? And would Short ever get the chance? Fischer used his bishop to come in with a check, and when the king found safety on b2, Fischer came in with a fresh check on c3. There are 3 moves Short can go for here. 1 is a1, 2 is b1, and 3 is c1. Avoiding the corner at all costs, Short decided to go for this king move, and once again, Fischer carried on with the checks. With the king moving eastward, basically any move wins for black. Bishop f4, for example, will get the bishop to come in with a check, and when the rooks come off, white has nothing to fight for. Okay, a knight move to f5 was chosen above the bishop move to f4, allowing the elimination of the rook for the bishop, which is in fact a beautiful combination because the rook could not come in with a check because the knight guards d6. On this very move, Short got his king out to e2, and it wasn't until this knight returned to d4 with a check when white was finished. King d1 was white's very last move in the game and gave up when the king moved into d3. Rook a3 was still possible, but what good is this move when black has e4 and now he's unstoppable and all the way to promotion? And even if nothing stood on the e-file, that fell on h7 can also make his way all the way to the first rank and queen. Fischer was the man to beat, but there are plenty of rumours around to say what we have seen today was the same person using an engine and pretending to be the legendary Fischer. Black did allow White to gain a substantial opening advantage and made from time to time some really bad moves throughout the game to confuse Short and those who were watching this game. Given the fact we had seen quite a number of computer moves in this game, no wonder many people are suspicious whether this was the real Fischer, only because Fischer's games are completely different. Anyhow, another very interesting game to say the least. I shall be back with much more very shortly. Until next time, this was your Chess Puzzler.